Thanks, Jan. I really didn't pay her to say those things, and I just kind of plug along here, and what we do with the city would not happen without really good people around you. And I think any of you that are in business know that that's true. You're only as good as the people that you work with. We're really fortunate in Casa Grande in two respects. I think number one, we have a city council that while we may not always agree on how to get where we're trying to get to, we almost always agree that we're trying to make the community a better place. And we also have a staff of people that are very dedicated to making Casa Grande all it can be. And so what I want to do today, and it's always a little challenging for me because I do a state of the city usually the first part of March, and I don't want to repeat myself, so I try to bring some new twists into what I talk about. So there will be some overlap, I recognize that, but there are a lot of people here that weren't there and want to make sure we get a good overview of what's going on in the community. So first of all, let's talk about money, and then we'll get off of that subject and talk about fun stuff. For over 30 years, the city of Casa Grande has maintained a property tax rate of no more than 99 cents. And state law is pretty complicated, and to cut through all of the bureaucratic nonsense, if we wanted to, we could be up around $1.10. I will tell you that our budget for next year, we are in the process of going through that right now. Our tax rate again next year is going to be 99 cents. So you get your tax bill and you say, wait a minute, the mayor told me 99 cents and my taxes are, I don't know, $12 or $13 or whatever they are. Suggest you look at your tax bill, because when we do our public hearing, we always get this little magical dollar bill that they whack into pieces to show how much of the tax rate that you pay is the city's tax rate. And I tell people all the time that, like many of you, probably all of you, most of you, I pay federal and state income taxes as well. And it's substantially more than I pay in all of my property taxes, and certainly way more than I pay for the city property taxes. And I have a tough time looking at my federal income tax check and saying, what did I get for that? Same with the state. But when I pay my property taxes, particularly that portion to the city, I know. I'm paying for the police department, I'm paying for the fire department, I'm paying for the parks and the recreation programs. It's very tangible and very real. I live in a pretty modest house. My property tax bill total is about $1,200, $1,300 a year, I guess. Out of that, less than $100 goes to the city of Casa Grande. And I only make that comment because it's really important to understand that we're coming out of one of the worst economic times we've seen in my lifetime. And we have managed to keep the city moving forward through that tough economic time. Like many cities, we have a bond rate. Our bond rate has been increased 4 times in the last 7 years, almost unheard of in today's economic times. When we started into the recessionary times, we had set aside a rainy day fund of just under $30 million. Today, that fund still has $23 million in it. So we've tried to be very good stewards. And again, that happens because of a council that's on the same page. We're all very fiscally conservative. We want to make the city a good place to live, but at the same time, we don't want to run people out because our taxes are high or our fees are high. Like many cities in Arizona, most of our income comes from sales tax, and we've been really fortunate this year. We've seen over the last 7 or 8 years a pretty flat sales tax number in the city of Casa Grande. In the last year, we're finally starting to see an increase in retail sales tax. And I think that's indicative of what I believe is going on in the local economy, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. We also have sewer and garbage fees, and we treat our garbage and sewer operations like you treat a little private business. While we don't do them for profit, they are fee-driven, and if you pay a garbage or sewer bill, that's for that service, and we don't have any other tax revenue that goes into that. One of the challenges that we've had over the last 5 years is that we expanded the treatment plant about 3 years ago. It's the largest public works project we have ever done in the city of Casa Grande. It was about $60 million. and that is to provide capacity for those businesses and residents that are coming in the future. And it takes about 5 years from the day you say, oh, we need to expand the plant, to having it operational. So if you back off 5 years from 3 years ago, you're probably in the 2004, 2005 timeframe when we said, look at the growth that's going on. We need to make sure that we stay ahead of it so that we don't have to stop that progress that's going on in the community. The market fell apart. Well, part of the repayment for those bonds was going to come from those new residents. So as we've kind of navigated our sewer and trash fees over the last 4 or 5 years, they have gone up. On the sewer side, much of that increase is to help pay for that treatment plant that we will eventually be able to recoup once the economy starts rolling along again. And then we also are subject to a lot of federal and state regulations that have changed. They've gotten much more stringent, and that's also caused us to have increased costs. So there are increases proposed for sewer and trash rates. We're still negotiating with where they're going to be, but just so you're prepared for it. I want to talk real quickly about impact fees, because I know there are some realtors in the room, and that's always kind of a hot button for them. And rightfully so. I mean, I get both sides of this equation. Development impact fees are a fee that everybody pays when they buy a new house. The developer pays for it, and it's a really complicated formula that identifies infrastructure improvements that are going to be needed to handle that growth, and then they prorate it out to a single-family home. And the problem is, if you don't have them, the burden of doing those improvements falls upon the existing homeowners. We've had several state law changes in the last 4 or 5 years that have kind of hammered away at our impact fees. Our impact fees today are about $10,000. About half of that fee goes to pay that pro rata share of the treatment plant and the collection system to get it there. And the rest of it is kind of spread between parks and police and fire and things like that. And I think going forward, that's going to be the next battleground for us. We have spent over $200 million in infrastructure in the last 10 years, and more than half of that came out of development impact fees. So it's a big number for us. We've been able to kind of stay ahead of the growth, and I think we've done a really good job of making Casa Grande a great place to live. So just be aware that it's out there, and when you hear it, you'll say, oh, I remember the mayor said something about that. I'm not a finance guy. I'm an engineer by training, and so I'm sure that much of what you're going to hear is more engineering talk than finance talk, so I'm done talking finance. We've had a tremendous success in the economic development world in the last 3 or 4 years. And again, I think the council's focus has been on we need to create jobs in the local community, because if you have people going to work, they're going to spend money, be it at a restaurant or retail store or whatever. And economic development is kind of a tough little game because it's not something that you see results immediately with. But I will tell you, looking back, even over the last few months, and certainly over the last 15 or 18 months, we've done a really good job with economic development. And I know, we are members of a couple of regional groups. One of them is Access Arizona. The other one is the Greater Phoenix Economic Council. Both have been tremendous partners in helping us land some of these new businesses. But I will also tell you that our internal guy is a gentleman named Richard Wilkie, and he carries a couple of different hats. He's also the airport manager, and he has a passion for economic development. And I'm going to tell a couple of stories as we go along about how we were able to land some of the companies we've landed. But I will tell you, I am probably more optimistic today than I've been in the 7 years I've been the mayor about where we're headed and what we're doing. So let's kind of quickly go through some of the projects that are out there and where they are and hopefully when they'll be open. Ones that are under construction that you've probably seen, the Valero station out on Florence Boulevard. They're scheduled to open within the next 30 to 60 days probably. There is a traffic signal plan for that intersection, so if you've ever tried to come out of Cottonwood Medical and had trouble turning left, that problem will be solved as soon as the signal gets put in. Hope to activate the signal before the 1st of August. So the station will be open a little before then, but it's nice to have that signal there if you've ever tried to make the left-hand turn. If you've been out to the mall in the last couple of months, you'll notice right behind In-N-Out Burger, there's a structure going up. That's going to be Buffalo Wild Wings. Yeah. Oh, are they? Okay. And if they're here, then I need to be careful because I believe that their target date for opening is the fall of this year. Is that more or less correct? Well, that's close to the fall. Okay. I actually had August, but I didn't want to commit to August because I didn't know you could do it that. For those of you that live on the north side of town, we've just recently seen a Taco Bell open out there. And I've had more people tell me they're so glad to see Taco Bell on that side of town because they live out there and now they can, on the way home, stop and get 3 tacos for $1 if the Diamondbacks win. Recently opened, as a matter of fact, they had their ribbon cutting, I think, was it last Friday, is Raising Cane's Chicken. They're out by the mall also. All they serve are chicken tenders, and Judy and I have a grandson who's a little bit of a connoisseur of, and he said they were really good, you know. I know we had a meeting yesterday, and Mr. Dinkle at Access Arizona provided lunch from Cane's Chicken. I thought it was good, Jim.
Not as good as Kentucky Fried Chicken, but
That's a matter of opinion. One of the other buildings going up over by LA Fitness, which a lot of people thought was Buffalo Wild Wings, is actually Tractor Supply Corporation. It's their retail center. They hope to have that open in the fall of 15 also. Tractor Supply is it's a Fortune 300 company. It's been around since 1939. And many of you know they are also building a distribution center just south of here, that big building that's out there. So I think about 600,000 square feet, plus or minus, slightly smaller than the Walmart distribution center is. They will be the distribution center for all of Tractor Supply's equipment throughout the Southwest. And they're bringing in 270 jobs, is the estimate. And I told you I was going to tell you some stories about economic development. This is one of my favorites because it's kind of a little game you play with big businesses. You know, they look across the country and they find 4 or 5 different communities that they like, and then they kind of pit the communities against each other to see who can give them the best deal. And then they dangle this 270 jobs in front of you and say 270 jobs. And I did the arithmetic last night. That constitutes over $7 million in new payroll inside the city of Casa Grande. Think about that in terms of if you're like Michael owns another restaurant here in town, think about what that does to the restaurant business if you have another $7 million of income that wasn't here a year ago. So we were out of the running for Tractor Supply. There was a West Valley city that was right in the middle of it. The CEO is in the air flying out to try to close the deal. The site selector meets him at the airport and says, guess what? Our meeting was canceled. And the CEO goes, well, I'm here. What do you want to do? And he goes, well, I'm hearing good things about Casa Grande, Arizona. Why don't we go down there and see what they've got? So they called my buddy Richard, and they said, Richard, we want to come in tomorrow. We need to have anybody who's able to make decisions about utilities there to meet with us. Richard called APS, Southwest Gas, Arizona Water, our sewer people, our garbage people, our planning people, and ended up with a meeting of about 20 people in our conference room to meet with the site selector and the CEO. So impressed the CEO, he came back and he said, you know what? He said, if that's an indication of what you guys can do in 24 hours, maybe we need to look more closely at Casa Grande, Arizona as a site. We made it through the cuts of the various, the semifinals, and we got down to the final 2 cities that were under consideration. It was Casa Grande, Arizona, and a town in Utah. And if you're in the economic development business, Utah is a formidable competitor because Utah offers incentives far beyond anything that the state of Arizona can offer. And I really think that it was just through the tenacity of our staff that we were able to land Tractor Supply here. It's about a $75 million investment in the local economy, and like I said, about $7 million a year in payroll. And they're a good company. They've been around since 1939. They're a Fortune 300 company. And an even bigger benefit is once we landed them, several other companies said, hey, maybe we ought to look at Casa Grande, Arizona too. And while can't talk a lot about who they are because we always have to sign a confidentiality agreement with them before they come public, I think over the next 6, 7, 8 months, we're going to have a whole series of announcements about new industries that are coming into town. At least that's my hope. And again, you look at a company like Tractor Supply, 270 jobs, over $7 million in payroll. We sit here at the Property Conference Center, and on both sides of us are industries that have been brought in here in the last 3 or 4 years. Erman Dairy, we're the West Coast, we're the only facility west of the Mississippi. They are out of Vermont. I don't know what their employment is today. They're around 100, I think. But they have expansion plans, and their market, they sell Greek yogurt, and market for that right now is very good. So again, we're really optimistic about where we are, where we're going, and not only with businesses that are coming into town that are new, but businesses that are expanding as well. Enough about Tractor Supply. Some of the other projects that are coming up. We're going to get an additional McDonald's restaurant here in town, and I'm a little curious to see how this is going to work, because it's going to go out in the mall. They have pulled a building permit, so they will be starting momentarily, but it's going to be between Mimi's Restaurant and Olive Garden. So if you, yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how all that parking is going to work when they're done. And the theme of this, I thought it was kind of interesting when I was kind of writing all these down. There's a theme that we're getting way more restaurants, more and more people that feel that Casa Grande has reached a population threshold where suddenly they want to be in this marketplace. And I think that there are different thresholds in that market. One of them was at 30,000, the next one's at 50. So I think we're going to see more and more restaurants that have an interest in coming to Casa Grande. And in fact, I'll talk about one of those in a minute. There is a project on the corner of Cottonwood Lane. It's the northeast corner, Cottonwood Lane and Peart Road. It's called Village by Mary T. They came in about a year ago, went through the planning process. For those of us that are getting up in years, it is an age-restricted community. They are proposing to build a standalone structure that will be more intensive care than independent living. But they are in the permit process right now for a building permit on that corner, and I think hopefully we'll get started fairly quickly. Shortly on the heels of that approval, we had a proposed project on the southeast corner of Rodeo and Treckle. And I've been here a little over 20 years. That's just been an empty lot for 20 years. This is a really nice project. Again, it has a component for senior adult living. They also are in the process of pulling a permit to build the first phase, which will be a multi-bed facility for elder care. So excited about both of those projects coming in, and certainly they're infill projects, which is always really nice. If you've been paying attention to the newspaper over the last couple of days, we just approved in our planning department a oil recycling company here in town. Again, it's just south of the Property Conference Center. They're a little ahead of themselves. They're going through site plan approval, which means they got through the Planning Commission, I think, Tuesday night, or Wednesday night. But they already have engineering plans in, which tells me that they're, number one, very serious about coming, and number two, they can't wait to get up out of the ground. So the name of the company is Sheffield Oil, not a big employer, but they will be fairly high-wage jobs. So once again, we're excited to see them come into town, and we're all about getting more jobs into the community. A couple of other food places, I talked briefly about a couple of them. There's one, and I don't confess I don't know anything about this one restaurant because it's new to me, but people that I've talked to say it's really good. It's called Boston Pizza. They are going through the planning process right now. They're going to be located just to the east of the Holiday Inn Express. It's supposed to be a really nice, upscale sports bar pizza place. It'd be nice to see them come into Casa Grande. And then the other one that's being, that I think is probably going to open up in an existing building in the fall is Firehouse Deli. They've been in town a couple of times. I think they finally found a place they seem to like, and they're moving towards renovating that space and moving in. And if you're not familiar with Firehouse Deli, there's a bunch of them up in the valley. Fairly new to Arizona, probably the last year or two. A very unique sandwich. So again, give you lots of different choices for your dining pleasure. One of the other things we talk about a lot internally, we believe there's a hotel room shortage here in town. And so we are talking to 2 or 3 hotel brands. Certainly you would recognize who they are if I were in a position to be able to tell you who they were. But, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but essentially we've seen our room tax, we collect a 2% room tax. For years and years and years, it ran between $75,000 and $100,000. All of a sudden, about 5 years ago, it started climbing. And we haven't increased the 2%, so that means the usage is increasing. This year, we expect to collect almost $500,000 in that. So you think about 5 years ago, the hotels that were in town, yes, we've added a few, but it tells me that the ones that are here, even though if you talk to a hotel manager, they'll always tell you that they could be fuller, I think the hotel business is really good here right now. So we have talked to many of the top name brands in Arizona and said, hey, look, you need to look at Casa, Grande, Arizona. Look at our numbers showing us what's going on in that lodging industry. And hopefully, you know, in the next 90 to 120 days, we'll start seeing some activity with some new hotels here in town. And I think we're ready as a community, and it's not to say anything disparaging about the hotels we have in town, so don't take it wrong. But I think we're ready for that next level of hotels in general in town. You know, the Hilton Garden Inns, the Marriott Courtyard, those kinds of hotels that we don't have here now. And I think over the next few months, we're going to start seeing some of those people get serious about Casa Grande, Arizona. I think that's about it for the private sector projects. It's a lot of stuff going on, certainly keeping our planning department busy. The housing industry's lagging a little bit. The 2 major home builders here in town are D.R. Horton and Meritage Homes. Meritage has come in and they're getting ready. They're almost sold out in their age-restricted side of Mission Royale. They are coming in early in the subdivision process to subdivide some land that they had as part of their holdings before the downturn, getting ready for that next phase of development. So I think between D.R. Horton and Meritage, they're 2 really strong home builders. We think we're going to start seeing a lot of activity. D.R. Horton is going around buying a lot of existing lot inventory that was built during the upturn and converting those into houses. There's some things they have to do with the planning department because they're changing the house models and things like that. But I think it looks like it's starting to get stronger every month, which certainly helps the realtors in the room because if people are buying new houses, they got to sell their old one first. We have a number of city projects as well that I wanted to briefly touch on. And, you know, some are more exciting than others, so I'll kind of quickly run through the list because I want to talk about a couple of them in more depth at the end. We're paving a chunk of Midway Road, probably starting July, and we are now a non-attainment air quality basin, and because of that, we have dirt roads everywhere. We're required to pave them. That's what Midway Road is. I'm sure the school district likes that because they won't be running buses on dirt roads anymore. But if you wonder why it is we're out there doing that, that's the reason, is that we're trying to improve local air quality. Several years ago, 5, 6 years ago maybe, we developed a maintenance strategy for all of our roads. It said 1 year we're going to do arterial roads, off years we're going to do local streets. This happens to be the year we're doing arterial roads, and I'm sure you've all seen I had a meeting I was late to, and I'm driving down, and I should know better. I'm driving down the road, need to turn right to get where I'm going, and guess what? The road's closed. So I had to drive a mile out of my way to get back there, and I was late for the meeting. But it's all healthy stuff, and so we're doing a lot of resurfacing on arterial roads right now. We're just about done with that program, but as you drive around and you see new streets, that's what that's all about. Talked about the signal at Valero. We are also putting a traffic signal in at Casa Grande Avenue and McCartney Road, which is the exit out of Valago Middle School. And if you've ever been unfortunate enough to be stuck, yeah. So a few of you have been stuck there, I see. That should be ready by the time school starts. So our goal is to have it done by end of July, first part of August. We are also working on kind of a fun little project that people scratch their head and say, why are you doing that? On the interstate, there is a rule that says you can only have interchanges every 2 miles in rural areas. So for us, that means Florence Boulevard, not Cottonwood Lane, Courtston Road, McCartney Road, Val Vista, and Pinal. We have some development activity going on the east side of I-10 at Courtston Road, and they are interested in accelerating the Courtston Road freeway interchange. We have finished a preliminary design for that. We have applied for a federal grant to build it, so we very likely may see that happen in the next few years, and it will drive development on the east side of the freeway, and not necessarily residential development. We just recently completed a master plan for Carbon Gnat Park. That's where the city swimming pool is. We hope to have some projects going out there this summer. It was done about 15 years ago, and it's old. You know, it needs to be updated. We've got some new things planned for it. And I think it's one of those quality of life things that as we do economic development becomes so important for new industries when they locate here. And then we're also putting in a sewer line to serve the Phoenix Mart project. And it's a $10 million sewer line. It'll go underneath the freeway. Phoenix Mart is paying for about half of it. We're oversizing the sewer line so we don't have to go back there and dig it again. So we're paying the other half. Design is done. We're waiting for Phoenix Mart to go vertical on the building before we start. We actually have negotiated most of the right-of-way out there. That'll be coming to the council over the next month or so. And with that as a lead-in, I'll talk a little bit about Phoenix Mart. I know they were here at, was it the last Biz Outlook lunch that Phoenix Mart was here? Phoenix Mart is, everybody knows what Phoenix Mart is, right? Yeah, okay, I thought maybe. They have got the site graded. It's 500 acres. They've got most of the pad building, or Phoenix Mart portion of 500 acres graded. And to put the size of the building in perspective, when you come out of here today, look over at Walmart DC and imagine a building that's 2.5 times bigger than that. That's how big the Phoenix Mart project is. We've issued the grading permit, we've issued the footing permit, and there's something like, I don't know, 572 footings on this thing. And they are in the process of digging those footings as we speak. We're ready to give them a foundation permit. And it's just under 2 million square feet of concrete slab, so it'll take them a little while to get there. One of the stumbling blocks we have had since we started is the fire analysis. We approved that last Friday, so we're ready to issue them a permit for the remainder of the building as soon as they come in and are ready to go. So there is a lot of progress going on in Phoenix Mart. I know everybody's like, when's it going to happen, when's it going to happen? But I think once the building starts going vertical, everybody will start saying, oh, wow, look, it really is going to happen. There are 1,800 vendors inside that building, and they are in the process of leasing vendor space as we speak. They've got several nationally recognized names that once they're in a position to start announcing who they are, you're going to say, oh, I know that company. They're still talking like they hope to be open late 15, early 16. I don't know how realistic that is, but I think that just the fact that we're making progress is huge. Make sure I'm not running out of time here. I want to talk just briefly about some of the things that the city's done to be more cost efficient too. We own the city golf course. I don't know how many golfers we have here, but if you play at Dave White, that is a city-owned and operated golf course. 6 years ago when I took office, and I take no responsibility for this, okay? But 6 years ago when I took office, we had a deficit of about $500,000 that we were subsidizing the golf course with. We've gone through a whole series of changes to try to make it more efficient. And the golf course, if you're not a golfer, you're like, well, why do you even have a golf course? But if you're out attracting industries, you get back to economic development, the golf course is a huge selling point. We subsidize a swimming pool, we subsidize a library, the golf course is no different. Here to tell you, we just got the numbers about a week and a half ago. We actually turned a $7,500 profit on the golf course. So, and again, that's through a lot of hard staff work and tough decisions, but not very many golf courses in the country that can say that they're turning a profit. The way we did it, just so you know, we're not geniuses, but we privatized it, and we were able to bring our costs down and number of rounds up, and we're able to turn a profit. Over the next year or so, we're going to start converting the streetlight system. I think City of Casa Grande has 4,000 streetlights, plus or minus. Our bill is about $500,000 a year. We are going to convert them to LED lights. So if you have LED lights in your house, they're brighter, more energy efficient. We can do that conversion and pay for it out of the savings that we're getting. And the advantage of LED lights is their life expectancy is about 5 times the life expectancy of the current lights. So again, one of those things we're looking at that says, how can we do what we do more efficiently? I'm going to put another plug in. I told you that Richard, our economic development guy, is also the airport manager. They've just opened up a restaurant out there that does, is it breakfast and lunch, Richard? Cafe, all right, I'm sorry. But if you've not been out there, it's kind of a fun place to go have a cup of coffee and light lunch, light breakfast, watch the planes land and take off. And certainly it's kind of off the beaten path, so if you want a quiet place to go sit and talk, it's a great place to go. And what that does for us, it's one more revenue stream that we look at within the airport operation. I'm not a tech guy. Certainly those of you that know me and the phone I use, you know I'm not a tech guy. But one of the things that if you're in business and you have this whole data storage problem, you know, where it just keeps growing and growing and growing and you keep buying servers, we collect all kinds of data. You know, our police department would amaze you how much storage they have. We've gone to cloud storage. Now, do I understand cloud storage? Not at all. What I do understand, though, is we save several $100,000 not having to upgrade servers by going to cloud storage. So again, it's one more of those little things that we're trying to do as a city to make sure that we get the best bang for our buck. One of the things we're experimenting around on, and you may have seen this, right now our fire department historically, when there's an accident, we send an engine company out there with 4 firefighters. We are working on a pilot program to send a smaller vehicle out with 2 men in the truck to respond to those minor emergencies. Have not seen the data yet, but again, if it shows that that works and doesn't put people's lives in jeopardy, it's a good move on our part because we'll ultimately save the taxpayers money. Instead of taking a fire truck out there that costs $1.5 million to replace, you can go out there with a utility truck that's maybe $100,000. So. We also are looking at changing. I get this comment all the time about our garbage service. We collect twice a week, once a week recycling. State law in Arizona says if you live in the desert, you got to pick up twice. There's a process you can go through to allow once a week pickup for garbage and once a week pickup for trash, and they do that for recycling, that they do in the valley a lot. We've had some trouble with that because for everybody in this room, and certainly my wife and I are that way, we don't generate a garbage can worth of garbage a week, much less twice a week. But for every one of us, there's 5 people that can barely get it into a can twice a week. So it's one of those cases where you can't be everything to everybody. State law says twice a week pickup. We are looking at doing some things to maybe modify that. We are talking to some people that will help us on the disposal side that may ultimately end up with some savings on the collection side. So we're always looking. So if you have any ideas, let us know. One of the other internal things I just wanted to touch on really quickly, we currently have an interim police chief, police department, public safety manager, because that's the title we're required to call him right now. We are probably going to be out on the street within the next couple of weeks looking for a new police chief. So if you've heard that rumor, right now that's the plan. So I'm going to close with just a couple of real quick things. I think I've got a couple more minutes. I talk a lot about economic development and kind of the council's philosophy about what we do. And I found a comment in a book I was reading one day that I think really exemplifies what we're trying to do. And it made a lot of sense once I read it. It said, you need to grow your economy faster than you grow your population. And so all of the hard work we're doing trying to bring those jobs into the community to drive down the unemployment rate, help sustain growth, we're trying to do that in such a way that we grow it faster than the number of people that come into town. And again, I am more optimistic today about that than I've been in a long time. I think the future for us is really bright. I think that we're right where we need to be, and it's as much luck as anything else. But as I tell people all the time when I play golf, I'd rather be lucky than good. There are some impediments to that. Certainly, as we talk to different businesses, the workforce is a problem that they look at. It's not a problem just here, it's a problem everywhere. But we need to make sure that we educate our students and our kids to be prepared for that next generation of workforce. I grew up at a time that they didn't have computers. And we have a 4-year-old grandson that's playing with my wife's smartphone when he was 2 years old. That's the generation that we need to be preparing for, and I think our educational system in Casa Grande is doing exactly that. We need to create an environment locally that attracts, when we have, and I'm not picking on anybody, okay, but when we have Fortune 500 companies that locate here and their manager lives in the valley, we don't have the advantage of all of the things that manager knows, the money that he makes, to be able to make the community a better place. And we're going to get there because we're going to make those amenities to attract those top managers to stay here. Been a lot of stuff in the press lately about the community center. I'm just going to close real quickly with a couple comments about the community center. Was voter approved about 7 or 8 years ago. It was part of a multi-pronged bond issue that included our public safety center, Fire Station 504, some improvements at the golf course, library. It was always intended that the community center would be the last thing we did. About 5 years ago, the Gilbert family, who used to own the mile between Peart, Cottonwood, Treckle, and Courtson, donated 10 acres for us to put it on. And Maricopa, town of Maricopa just finished one about 1.5 years ago. The problem is they're a money pit. And so we felt like we had to come up with some mechanism to be able to make sure that we could keep the doors open if we built it. First thing we did is we went out and talked to a nonprofit, happened to be the YMCA, to see if we could do a joint venture with them. We were ready to sign the agreement with them, and unfortunately, they had some internal problems, had to pull out of the deal. So we went back, kind of retrenched, and we went to our Parks and Rec staff, and we said, show us how you can do this without costing the city any more money than the Park and Rec programs cost us today. I mean, we pay for the Parks Department, we pay for recreation programs, the Teen Center, Dorothy Powell Center. Several months later, they were able to come back, and they have a plan now that shows how we can run that community center as a city operation and cost the taxpayers no more than we cost today to run those same programs. Much of it is consolidation of the programs into a single building. Our plan right now is we've got an architect and a contractor already on board. We've asked them to do some preliminary conceptual work so the council can see what it is that they think we can build for the money that we have and operate for what we can operate with. But I expect to see that come to the council within the next 30 days or so, and hopefully it will no longer be a news item, but will be a item that says we're moving forward with that. But that's been the hang-up. Right, wrong, or indifferent, we're trying to be very careful with the public's money, and that's kind of where we are. So with that, I've run out of time. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the speech, and see you next time.